Hey guys, I wanted to do a quick review of my brief stint at DevMountain. I had signed up for the iOS boot camp this was in Salt Lake City, Utah, and it was for late April 2019 as the start date. This is a video primarily for anyone who is thinking about moving from out of state to Salt Lake City to do the program. I was coming from Oklahoma. I had pretty much left everything to come do this program, and I just wanted to kind of give you guys a heads up of what I experienced the short time I was there, just so that you don't make the same mistake I did and have maybe some unrealistic expectations. So I just wanted to maybe help a brother out or a sister, and if this helps make your decisions, then I wish I would have known this information before I went. Anyway, so I'll get to it. I'll try to not take too much rambling time, but I have been working in the professional world before I decided to try to somewhat switch things up and go into software programming, specifically iOS development. And having been in the professional environment, I was used to a certain quality of maybe execution and behavior, things like that. And the programmers that I have worked with professionally were relatively clean, almost OCD, some of them. And that kind of is something that I thought was a characteristic that they portrayed in real life that was good, in the sense that you want somebody who's like that with their code, at least to a certain extent, where it's very clean, very orderly, stuff like that. And that's what I had experienced in the professional world. So I thought I was going to kind of get around some programmers that were similar to that. And I thought DevMountain, I saw some ads for it, so I did a bunch of research first off, and then there's a whole bunch of different programs out there, and I had decided to do DevMountain. They were one of the few who did an iOS program. That was one of the reasons. And also, it was in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I love the mountains, I love the outdoors. I thought it'd be a fun opportunity. So I signed up, put in my deposit, non-refundable, and a few months later I was driving there. And anyways, I got there the night before. I stayed in a hotel just so that I could check in first thing on the next morning. It was a Saturday morning. And I had been scheduled to have housing because I was an out-of-state person. You don't have to be out of state to get housing there. Like, this is school-provided housing. They don't necessarily offer it to every student, but if you're within a certain range of the school, then I don't know if you're qualified to, get the free housing. But if you're coming from out of state and you sign up in time, then it seemed like there was a pretty good chance that they were going to try to work in some housing for you that was going to be included with your tuition costs. So that was another huge reason to pick DevMountain. Anyway, so again, I'm not trying to harp on DevMountain. I just want other people to be aware of what I experienced so that they know that they might experience the same thing. As long as you go in with the appropriate expectations, then it's a totally different ballgame than if you go in with expectations and receive something completely different. So, that being said, I expected just naturally that the housing that I would be in, the apartment, which I knew I would be sharing with 3 or 4 other people into a apartment, but it was only 3 months, so 3 or 4 months, so I was like, I could do that, that's no problem. But I had thought all of these would be people from my same cohort, people who would be coming in to do the same program that I was doing. And that was just my assumption. I don't think I read that anywhere. They didn't state that it would or would not be that. It was just my assumption. And so I just assumed I'd be moving into a kind of, blank slate apartment. One that we'd all be moving in together, we'd get to know each other, that type of a thing. However, they sent me the code to get into the apartment, and this was the morning of like your check-in. You didn't really go to a place first. Maybe I could have, but the instructions were just to, here's your apartment code. It'll be sent to you at 9 a.m. on this morning, and that'll be your first day you can arrive. So I was there ready to go. I put the code into the door pad, I go into the apartment, and it was, I don't want to say like, I'm not a dramatic person generally, but it was one of the worst smelling apartments I've ever been in my life. In fact, not just apartments, one of the worst smelling places I've ever been in my life. It smelt terrible. I don't even know like how to describe it because it was such a unique smell, but it was clearly from trash. There was trash everywhere. I'm talking empty beer bottles, empty big liquor bottles, which I drink. I'm not like opposed to drinking. It just felt very college. And there was food. I'm talking raw eggs, pans and plates with just, food that should be refrigerated that wasn't, all over the floor, all over the counters, all over the tables, the couch. Like, it was everywhere. And damp towels, messy towels everywhere, trash everywhere, food all over. The bathroom, you could barely even see the mirror because there was so much like toothpaste spit and stuff on there. It was just like a glaze, like a hazy mirror. So I'm talking dirty. I am somewhat clean, but I can certainly deal with like people who aren't clean. I don't expect everyone to be as clean as me, but it was another level. I've been in many college scenarios where there was not clean and it was fine with me, but this was another level. And so I kind of thought, well, I guess the school doesn't like check the apartment when people from the previous cohort moved out. They just left everything in a total trash pit. And I guess the admins at the school just don't check. So I just thought, well, that seems like an oversight to me, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spend the whole weekend cleaning this place up. I'm gonna go buy some Febreze, some candles, I'm gonna get it smelling good, and we're gonna start this 3 months fresh. So I yell to make sure no one's in the apartment. I assume I'm the only one there because I was there like as soon as we were allowed to be there. And so I was like, okay, I'm the first one here, no one's here. All the doors were closed from the bedrooms, so I just thought, well, they exited the apartment, left everything trash, closed all the doors. That was just how they left it. Anyways, no one answered when I yelled, for if anyone was here. So I have my big suitcase, I have everything. I open one of the doors, and lo and behold, there was a guy and girl in bed in there. And I was very startled, and so I spilt my coffee because I just didn't expect to see anyone. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, and I closed the door. Part of me was frustrated because I was like, if someone would have said something, then I would have known not to come into this room, and now I feel bad, and it's awkward. But anyway, that happened. And so at that point, I was almost relieved. Relieved because I was like, the school sent me the wrong instructions for the apartment. Like, they sent me the wrong number. I must be assigned to a different number because there's people already living here. And of course I was under the assumption that that wouldn't be the case. And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna be in a different apartment. And I almost was relieved at that point. So I go up to the school and I'm like, I'm gonna get this cleared. I'm gonna figure out where I'm actually living because it's not here. There's actually people living here. So I go up to the school. Trying to find somebody to talk to about any of this was a difficult task in and of itself. They didn't have maybe they do now, maybe I was just there on a bad day, but there was no receptionist, nobody. It was kind of chaos when I got up there. There was just no order that I could clearly say. Even their little like offices, I didn't see any labels on them of like who was who, and so I'm just like asking random people, who do I talk to about housing? They're like, I don't know. And so I wandered around trying to find somebody. Finally, I find the guy who's kind of in charge of admins. Now, I can't remember what his name was, but he was extremely nice, and I really liked him as a person. However, even in walking around the school, I kind of understood in just seeing the classes in progress and things like that, that I had wrong expectations about the demographic as well. I am not in any way against people who, fall into this demographic at all. In fact, I think they do really good work and they're super smart a lot of the times. but it's definitely not what I was used to from coming from the professional world. Anyways, a lot of what I felt like I was seeing was people who were, you have maybe a couple different types of programmers. You have some that are maybe more corporate, professional, maybe they're not as innovative, I don't know. But then you also have this kind of stereotype of like the guy who's up late in the night, like drinking Mountain Dew and pizza, hasn't showered for a week, and is just like playing video games and programming and like figuring out how to hack stuff. And the latter is more of what I felt like were, oh, this is the type of like environment, like, and it made a little more sense about when I saw that in the school. I thought, wow, okay, that's similar to my apartment. Like the apartment was very trashed, very like messy, like food just left out all the time. And in a lot of ways, I'm not hating on this because these people have a dedication to computers. Like they literally they don't care to clean their food because they're so dedicated to computers, and they've probably built a lot of the technologies that I use these days, so I'm not hating on them. I'm just wanting to, again, help people set their expectations so that they know what they're getting into, because I wish I would have known. Anyway, more power to you if you're this person. But anyway, that's the kind of type that I was seeing as I walked around the school. And so that didn't bother me too bad, but as far as living scenario, I was just like, again, I'm not very good with dealing with like lots of food left out everywhere. I can for like a couple of days, but if it's more than 2 days old and it's like, fish or eggs and stuff, that would just kind of bother me. So I picked up that it was not necessarily like your professional type of environment, more almost like a college kind of environment. So again, it's not fair of me maybe to expect them to have been a professional environment. I came from a professional environment. A lot of their students probably come from, straight from high school or college, so it's an easier transition. I had been working in the corporate world for 8 years, so it was just different for me. Anyway, I talked with the people and came to understand that I was not going to be moving into a apartment with a bunch of new people from my cohort, but I was actually at the right apartment, and that I was moving in with people who had been there for I don't know how long, a number of months, and were a part of a different programming cohort. So they weren't going to be iOS developers, they were, web, or I don't remember what their other offerings were, but at least web was one of them. So maybe they were web developers. Again, I have no problem with living with other people, but I was kind of, once the culture is established in a place, be it a work environment or a home or whatever, it's much more difficult to change the culture once it's already established than to create a new culture. And so I knew at that point, okay, I am moving in with 3 or 4 other people who have been living here for months, and I saw that the way that they were living. So I knew at that point, I'm going to either be the bad guy who's always cleaning and makes people feel like they're a nuisance to me or whatever. And I would hate to be that to them and put them in that environment. And also, too, I knew I wasn't going to change the culture, so I was going to have to live with it as it was. And anyway, so at that point, I knew my options are either stay in the apartment that I knew I saw earlier, and not only that, but if I clean it, it's probably going to get very quickly back to that, because that's the way that the culture is now in that apartment. Or, so stay there, get my own apartment living, which would have been several $1,000s more for the 3 months. If I could even have found a 3-month contract, short notice. Or 3, see if I could drop out of the program. And so I did a bunch of thinking over the course of like an hour period after I found out all this information. Made a few phone calls to people who mentor me and people who were developers that I had been asking. And a lot of my developers, friends who worked in the environment said, hey, school would be great to do, but just know it's not like mandatory. You can do it online if you're self-disciplined and save a lot of money. But a lot of people aren't self-disciplined, so if you aren't, then you'll want to spend the money and go to the program. Also, you'll get other benefits from doing the program. There's good benefits to doing it, but if you're really motivated, you don't have to. you can just do it online. And so at first I was like, no, I want to do the actual physical program. I started rethinking doing the online. So after mulling it over, I decided I'm going to do the online course on my own time. I'm like fairly disciplined, so I probably would be fine. So I went and approached the administration admin or whatever. And this is the guy who I had come in contact with finally, and he'd been really nice. And basically asked him, like, I would like to withdraw from the program. The living situation is not what I expected at all. And I don't know if I can, to be honest, I want to be a man and say I can do anything, I can handle anything, but I just really would not enjoy living in that environment. And so I would like to withdraw. And he made a few phone calls, and basically he worked it out where they gave me I had to already send in all the money for the whole program in cash, but credit card, whatever it was. And so they agreed to refund me everything except the non-refundable deposit, which was $750 or $850. So that's still, that's near $1,000, and that I lost down the drain because I decided to withdraw from the program. But I didn't want to throw too much of a fight because honestly I was just like, the whole thing was so stressful. But it is a bummer that they kept that much money when the reason I didn't do the program was because of maybe it's just miscommunications and misunderstandings about the housing situation. If I would have known what maybe it would have been like, I would be moving in with other people that were already there, and if they would have just been a little more clear about some things, maybe I don't know if I would have not signed up if I'd have known all that. Maybe I probably still would have, but at least it would have been good to know so that I could have not lost nearly $1,000 and a whole bunch of time and effort moving all my stuff up there, thinking I was going to be there for 3 months just to get there and find out it was like chaos. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of it. I can't speak towards the educational part of the program because I was there for like 3 hours. But for anyone going to stay in the housing and just maybe want an understanding of a brief snapshot that I got of the culture, that's what I'll say. Maybe it was just for that cohort. You might have a totally different experience that's fantastic, but just wanted to share mine. Okay, have a good one. Bye.